This is one of a couple videos I'm going to make for the game framework, and really it's kind of just like an Unreal framework for this. I wanted to stick away from what we're implementing and focus on how things, at least to my understanding, are typically laid out. So as far as just the editor in general, we have this I never really use if we're going to insert our own stuff. It's nice to prototype sometimes by sticking the cube in and blocking something out, but typically we'll make everything here in our content. So I don't really get into this a lot. Sometimes if we're doing something with landscaping we might, but I think it seems like we're going to be importing our models and avoiding that. So everything that's in your scene is going to be up in this part of the editor, and as you highlight them, you can see them selected here. This doesn't have anything, but if we wanted to add things to a folder, we can start to block things out. Like if we had a map that you run around in, you might have all of the obstacles that they would have to avoid in one folder, and all of the props in another folder, and all the lights for this one. If we were using this spline system, which we won't, all the splines go to folder, so that just kind of like makes this a lot smaller. This is a really small list, but it gets pretty crazy pretty quick. From here, you can either press Control E or edit any blueprints by clicking here. And it'll take you straight to that blueprint. Alternately, you can right-click stuff and usually browse to it, and you can go straight to it here. And sometimes you'll want to go to one or the other. Not always you don't always want to jump all the way into this. But if you did and you wanted to get back to it, you can browse to it. So pretty much everywhere you can find an hourglass or magnifying glass to get back to the actual asset, which is nice. Like if we were wanting to look for a certain sound effect, we could highlight something that we know has it and grab it that way. Or if I wanted to apply a sound effect, like it's a metal hit, and then something over here takes a sound effect in. If I press the arrow here, and that was like the right type, it would place whatever asset I have highlighted into this little box. I mean, that's not a sound object, but if it was, that's what you do. So over here we have the details, which is usually where it'll default to. So whatever you have clicked on, it'll have all the different things you have set up for it. I don't have any settings there, but on this one, okay, yeah, this is custom. So this default is a category I made, and we'll jump in there in a second and look at that. But basically, anything that we add variable-wise that we want to expose, we can organize this way, the same way that they've organized their stuff. So I'll press Control E and jump into this blueprint. You can see this is why they're showing up there, and it's under the default category because it looks like I did not add them to one. So like, let's say I wanted to make a custom settings. Now there's this folder, and I would drag stuff into that, and this would be something I'd want to do, especially if it got more complicated to where we were setting things up for different reasons at different times. There might be more that ought to go in there, but see this game instance ref, organized into a folder for refs. This is simple enough that there's not more, but there might be references to the player and whatnot. So getting to the details panel over here, just like over there. You can control tab just like you would in a browser to move between tabs. It'll jump to the last one, or you can select them, which does help quite a bit to move around faster. So let me go back up to the base here. So in addition to the details, you have the world settings, and this is everything for this map. Every map is going to have the option to have its own game mode, and by default it won't have any overrides, so whatever in our main settings is the game mode will be applied to this one. So if we only used one for everything but like menus, it was like game mode and menu game mode, then you would usually just leave it at none and set the default one up here. But for example, if we were in a party kind of game where there's 15 different game modes, you wouldn't really want to just leave it up to whatever some default is. So we were in the spectator game mode here, and we also are using, I believe, I guess VR game mode. I thought we had an Eros one, but Eros game instance. So VR game mode and spectator game mode are going to have different settings, mostly of interest to us right here. our default pawn for the spectator mode is a spectator pawn that I made. I was moving to that asset. And so this spectator pawn is in place of our VR character that uses the joysticks and stuff. And it's got its own default, I think it is like a floating camera kind of thing where it's like a 6 degrees of freedom stuff. And I just added these to it to give the kind of like cinematic controls, director kind of controls for the for this map where you're watching the near land. So it's got these defaults like the pawn. So if you don't have a specific pawn put in the level, this player start, which is what we ought to use, will spawn whatever the default is. If I wanted to control this asteroid as a character or something, I could say possess this asteroid, or I could sit over here like asteroid pawn. You can't just jump into an asteroid. I'd have to make a pawn, but this is the model. But when you get the idea, if I could like pick between Yoshi and Mario and Donkey Kong in a racing game, they'd all each have their character. I wouldn't try to possess a single thing. I would possess whatever it is. It would say something like, "Hey, game instance, what's the current pawn?" and then spawn that or something. So you have all these defaults. This game state we won't worry about because it's mostly based on networking stuff, online things, and we are looking at instead game mode and game instance. You don't see game instance here because it's a one-off. It's used for the entire game. Game mode is per level, and so you would want to just use it logically how you would think of things that belong only in this level, or only in certain levels, or only in levels with a certain kind of character. So there's nothing hard and fast about what you put where. It's just kind of where things make sense to go for you. If I go to this game mode, there's probably not a lot in any of these. It looks like this one doesn't even recognize that it's been opened, so you do want to delete this stuff whenever they're not being used. It's not a big deal, but I think there's some sort of overhead that adds up across a ton of files. What we would see is usually variables right here, and then we don't really talk to the game mode to tell it to do stuff a lot, or I haven't at least. So it would say the game mode would talk to the game instance, and it would say, hey, take these variables and do something with them, either when I start or whenever a certain event fires off. Something else talks to me. So the game mode, and now the other big thing was the game instance. And I talked about it a bit in the UI videos, but the game instance right now is handling all of our menus, our scene transitions, all kinds of things. We'll want to talk to this when they aren't the main actor involved. Like my widget that popped up on the screen isn't the main actor if my character's running around. Like they both have something to say about what the character says. Pull up my pause screen. The widget is going to show stuff maybe based on what level you're on or how much health you have or whatever it is. But they all reach out to the game instance to get any information they need, or to see what other things have reacted to them. I have the data points when you walk over them in the VR map. They know what to show you because they talk to the game instance here, and they're like, I need to show the data point. Here's the information for the current setup. If I specified different things that I wanted, the same data point could be overridden with other information, and it would change it dynamically without anyone having to know how data points work. So right now you'll see a lot of stuff for the widgets. In the last videos I made things for the DevTools, and so that would give a good example of the kinds of things to use here. In the next video I want to go into fixing up some things that I kind of put in a bad spot, particularly this whole code here, because it was setting up a countdown timer, which could make sense if it was the same every level, but I put it on the character, and I really ought to put it either in the level blueprint or the game mode or the game instance. But I'll leave that alone for this moment, and I mentioned one other thing here, this level blueprint, and it's going to be somewhat similar to the game mode, but it's kind of like zooming in one more level. So if the game instance is everything that lasts the whole time, not just that you're playing in one setting, but the whole time you're playing this game at all, then the game mode would be things that are only kind of more currently relevant, like in this instance. But it might be applicable in several levels, for example. Whereas this level blueprint is saying, like this one, I think it was Eric put together the thrusters. There is a trigger in the level, and this thing is, I believe, a reference to it. So you can see it off there, that green thing here. This thing is talking to the level blueprint. If you highlight something and press F, it'll zoom in on it. And it's going to talk to the level blueprint, which has logic that only applies to this one scenario. So this could be put into a blueprint like this. This is just a trigger, but it could be made into a blueprint, and then we could reuse this trigger for different types of things. But if it's just a simple one-off thing that we need, we don't necessarily need to clutter up these folders with it. So we're just talking to it here, and other things that we might do in this level is, like this character, say, hey, we have a countdown, this is the maximum, this is the minimum, and do stuff when it expires. This logic is going to be used a lot, perhaps, but a specific amount of time might be level specific. So when I come into the test map, I might say, get this level's duration, and then find all actors of the class of that kind of timer, and then set their duration to this. So yeah, it kind of goes game instance, game mode, game or the level blueprint. And the level blueprint is just like any other blueprint. It's just things that are related to the world rather than to things in it. So I wanted to cover more broad strokes about this, but I think I will leave it here and think about what to put together for moving around that timer.